How is everybody doing? Greetings, folks. We still talking about the issue of immigration, and there are a few other pointers that I left out that I needed to discuss in this video. And I wanted to say that, as I said in the prior video, that the decisions of immigration depend on the particular individual or individuals in a situation of a couple, and what are their unique and particular needs, and what are their unique and particular circumstances at a particular time. And these decisions, there might be limitations that might come based on age and based on number of years that you've been working, which might mean that you can't afford to take time off from work because now you have a family and kids. Those are some things like that that can limit your options when it comes to immigration. I say this because immigration is very difficult. If we are just being honest, it's very difficult. Ask me, how do I know? That's a story for another day. But what I would say is that if you want to immigrate, it's better if you just do it. The sooner you do it, the better. Because the longer you delay the process, the more variables you add into your life, the more complicated the process becomes. What do I mean? Like, for instance, it's easier for a recent graduate to move abroad because such a person would be able to just move and with not with the purpose of working, but with the purpose of doing a master's or a PhD. And in particular, a PhD, if you have a bachelor honors degree, you can do a PhD in the US, and that will take you 4 to 5 years. Older folks who are already married and have kids cannot generally afford to take 4 or 5 years of their lives. But a young person without such commitments and incumbents can do that. And why would that be something that is important? Is because sometimes you might have all the qualifications required for you to get a job that suits your skills abroad, but employers will still prefer people who are in that particular country. Like, for instance, you might be applying for a job in, for my case, Texas or Florida or Arizona or Georgia, but it's a different situation altogether if I'm in Galveston and I'm applying for a job in Houston, or I'm in Austin, I'm applying for a job in Dallas, or I'm applying for a job in El Paso and I'm already living in Houston. How is it different? It's different because as soon as the employer sees that you are far away, 15 hours away, or let's just say, depending on what sort of flight plan you might use, it could be 15 to 25 hours away. The employer might just say, listen, there are people here and there are Americans here. Let me just hire the people who are here. But if you are already in the country or in the state, you are in state, you're already a resident of that state, then it becomes easier for them to seriously consider you, interview you, motivate for you to get that job than if you're on the other side of the world. And what makes it easy for them to do that is if you're already in the country, and for you to be already in the country because you came to the country to study. That's how most people do these things. I found that for people who've been working for quite some time, the study option that is best suited for them in order for them to go abroad is normally for you to go abroad to do an MBA. That is if you can get funding for it. There is a lot of folks that I know who went to the UK for MBA and they never came back to South Africa. But I mean, the UK is very popular for its MBAs, I suppose, whether it's Oxford or Cambridge or any of those ones, or Imperial College of London. People go there, they do an MBA, and then the magnet, they meet people there. Next thing you know, they get a job in London, or they get a job in the US, or even in Australia, because of how international these universities are. So that's one thing that you might look at, especially maybe as someone who is already working or who's been working for a long time, and maybe is married but does not have kids yet, because that's going to be very helpful. You can still take your wife or your husband and pack your bags and go to the UK and do an MBA, and then just remain there afterwards. Or you can take your wife or your husband and go to New York City and do an MBA. Maybe NYU has a great MBA program. It doesn't have to be NYU. I mean, it could be even University of Buffalo, for instance, or Columbia, or any of those state of New York universities. You can do an MBA, and where else? What better place to be to find a job, especially in the financial services, than in New York? It doesn't even have to be in New York City. Or then some people end up maybe in Boston or LA or Houston. Yeah, so I mean, I know someone who did an MBA in Oxford, I think 2 years ago, and now they are living in Houston. So those are the options that, because generally when you are working and you have a work investment bank job in Johannesburg and you want to leave South Africa, it might be easier to go via let me go study an MBA at University of Houston, or let me go study an MBA at University of Texas at Austin, or let me go do an MBA at Georgia Tech. So these these are the options that are going to make life easier for you if you are trying to move abroad. But for younger and recent graduates, I would say try to do a PhD. Because if you have an honors degree and you apply for a PhD anywhere, say in the US, because I know about the US in particular, and you get accepted, you will receive funding, because American universities only accept PhD candidates that they are able to fund. What do I mean by that is that the limit of candidates that they accept into their PhD programs is their ability to fund them throughout the 4 years and 5 years that they are studying with them. And that's for most PhD programs in the STEM fields. I don't know about humanities. So especially in sciences, technology, engineering, and medicine. That's where you are likely, and commerce, likely to get a fully funded PhD, and that is normally through assistantships and fellowships. Things like you are basically working for the university as an assistant. You are basically a tutor, if that's the language that you're going to use in South Africa. I mean, you grade papers, you invigilate exams, you lecture some courses sometimes. You supervise experiments on the sciences and engineering side. You do all those things. You do admin for the professors. you are basically working full time while like that's basically how the university gets to recoup the money that it gives for you to enroll as a PhD student. And it's actually just a symbiotic relationship because the universities in the US in particular want to produce as many PhDs as possible, because even if those PhDs don't end up all of them in academia, as long as there's enough of them who end up in academia, that is why they they are more likely to fund PhD students than they are to fund masters programs, because people who do masters programs, they do them and it's already known that they're not going to continue and go into academia. They are more likely going to go the professional route into corporate. But universities want scholars, they want professors, so therefore it is an incentive for them to fund PhDs for their papers. Yeah, so that's one way that someone who wants to move, and for some one way or the other they are having difficulties, or you might not even be having difficulties. It might just be that it's just a simpler way to moving abroad, by just applying to do an MBA, especially if you've been working for a number of years, or just do a PhD if you are a recent graduate, and you are likely to be able to just go and having a fully funded PhD program. If you want to go to Australia, it's easier for people in STEM to go to Australia to do a master's, because Australia have these programs where if you have an engineering degree, which is an honors degree, and you apply to do a master's that side, it's likely also to be fully funded in a similar way as the PhDs are funded in the US, through assistantships and fellowships and all those sort of things. Yeah, so you might want to look into that. If you want to go to Europe, Europe is a lot more difficult in terms of getting funded. A lot of people are able to get accepted to do a master's in the UK or France or Germany or Italy, and then the problem becomes funding. That's why then you see a lot of folks opening these GoFundMe pages saying, "Oh, assist so and so that they can go do their masters." It's very difficult. People also, it's similar with in the UK, is that if you are going to do a PhD, it's going to be easier for you to go than if you are going to do a master's. But if you're going to go do a PhD in the UK, you might have to do you will have to do your masters in South Africa first, because in the UK they do not have that US option of doing 5 years without a master's, just 5 years, which gives you a PhD. The UK system is similar to the South African system, where you need to do honors, masters, and PhD. So there's no such option of you can just get a honors degree and then you register for a PhD. So you will have to do a master's in South Africa, which is 2 years, and then apply for a PhD. And if you're applying for a PhD in the UK, you are more likely to get funding than if you're applying for a master's. But I think that's just the basic rule almost everywhere in the world. If you are applying for, if you are going to do a PhD anywhere in the world, a PhD, whether it's the US, Canada, anywhere in Europe, Australia, you are more likely to get funding. So if you are someone who already has a master's degree, you are someone who is in a better position than most people, because regardless of where you are going in the world, if you are going to do a PhD, you will get funding. So yeah, so that's really where the issues are, because once you're in that country, it's easier for you to navigate through relationships and connections and networks to get actually permanent employment. Yeah, but With regards to the other options, please consider watching the part one and part two of this series of videos that I've done. And if there's anything else that I've left out for people who have immigrated before and for people who are thinking of immigration, and they have questions, please leave me your questions or comments below, and then we can discuss it further. I can make another video to answer some of those questions. But I think for the most part, I've covered most of the pressing issues that are around the issue of immigration. There are other options for immigrations for people who aren't particularly educated in a sense of higher education. Maybe I can cover that in another video, but those options are a lot more difficult and a lot more competitive. They could potentially be called a definition of a long shot. That could include the programs of the diversity program in the United States, where you're actually just thrown into a lottery system and then it's a lucky draw. Excuse me. And then there are other options. I'm not going to go into them right now, but we can discuss them at another time. Okay, cheers.